Dimka's arrest and confession turned into a media frenzy. He appeared in front of the press wearing a confident smile. A tape recording from Dimka's confession was played, after which Dimka confirmed that the voice on the tape was indeed his, and confirmed that he did not confess under duress. The coup seems to have been motivated as much by the actions of the Supreme Military Council, as it was a host of real and imagined grievances and personal animosity towards the leading figures in the government. It can be summarized as an attempt by a faction of middle belt officers to regain privileges and prestige which they felt had been taken away from the new regime. A summary of the mutineers' grievances can be categorized as follows. 1. They felt the SMC were increasingly pursuing communist policies. 2. The coup that removed Gowon removed middle belt minority officers from prominence. 3. They felt the recent army promotions were unmerited, especially that of Lieutenant General T.Y. Danjuma. And 4. Rumors of a mass layoff by the army unnerved most of them, especially because there were short service officers that were commissioned in the emergency of the Nigerian Civil War. The FMG also added that in the plotters' view, Gowon was not given sufficient opportunity to change his governing style. The plotters opposed the dismissal of the former military governors, and they wanted to return Gowon and all his governors back to office. Initially, the plotters were more concerned with eliminating government figures than they were with political reform. They intended violence of much greater magnitude than they usually manage to achieve. According to Dimka, some of the hardline plotters initially proposed a full-scale assault on an elimination of all SMC members. Dimka claimed that plotters argued that the coup should be bloody and wild, but he pointed out the senseless nature of trying to kill so many senior figures. Dimka insisted that the plot would never succeed if they preoccupied themselves with trying to eliminate so many people. Dimka also claimed that he had met and briefed General Gowon in London on the coup plots of the Kaduna Majors, and that Gowon made him aware of a separate group of plotters in Lagos, headed by Major General Bisala. He alleged that Gowon told him to report to Bisala for further instructions when he returned to Nigeria in order to coordinate the efforts of the Kaduna and Lagos plotters. Since the executors of the January and July 1966 coup were never tried, there was no law in Nigeria prescribing punishment for coup plotting against a military regime. As one of the Army's most experienced officers in military law and procedure, Lieutenant General T.Y. Danjuma dictated the creation of a board of inquiry to investigate the coup and a military court-martial to try the culprits. He dictated these measures to the Attorney General, General Dan Ibekwe, leading to the speedy enactment of Decree 8 in February 1976, the Treason and Other Offences Decree. It was the first decree signed into law by the new head of state, Lieutenant General Olusegun Obasanjo, and it empowered the FMG to create a special military tribunal composed of military officers to try the coup plotters for treason, murder, or any other offences committed before the decree came into effect. The military board of inquiry, headed by Major General Emmanuel Abisoye, investigated the coup. The board subpoenaed witnesses, conducted investigations, and compiled evidence upon which a trial would be based. The other board members included Deputy Inspector General of Police Adamu Suleiman, Navy Captain Olufemi Olumide, Lieutenant Colonels Mukhtar Mohammed, Joshua Dogonyaro, and Maman Vata. The investigators spread their nets far and wide, as almost 220 people were arrested. Of those, 130 recommended for trial and 66 were discharged. The SMC was effectively acting as a judge, jury, and executioner. This was a dangerous precedent that would come back to haunt some of the SMC members several years later, when two of them, namely Obasanjo and Yar'Adua, fell victim to the mechanism they created. Most of the defendants were middle belt officers from minority ethnic groups in Gowon's hometown of Plateau. Since officers from this area had murdered a Muslim Hausa leader from the far north, the tension between the middle belt officers and those of the far north resurfaced as minority middle belt officers replaced Igbos as the new treacherous scapegoats of the day. Dimka's confessional statements were crucial to the prosecution's case. They took a life of their own as he implicated an ever-increasing circle of officers. The Commissioner for Defense, Major General Ilia Bisala, was first implicated by Lieutenant Colonel T.K. Adamu, who claimed that he reported the coup plot to Bisala. Adamu's allegation led to Bisala being arrested and interrogated. However, when he appeared before the Board of Inquiry, Bisala denied that Adamu ever reported the plot to him. A stalemate ensued, as it was General Bisala's word against Adamu's. Bisala was on the verge of being cleared when Dimka's shocking revelation also implicated him. Dimka alleged that he executed the coup on the behest of Bisala. Bisala was rearrested and put on trial. When Dimka saw Bisala at the Special Military Tribunal, he cursed and spat on him, accusing him of being the mastermind behind the whole plot. Major General Bisala had always been a close friend of Murtala. He trained with him at Teshi and Sandhurst and even attended Murtala's funeral. However, in the mind of the investigators, Bisala's earlier complaints about Danjuma being promoted over his head, coupled with Dimka's implication of him, could now be used to attribute a motive to Bisala. General Yakubu Gowon, who was still in the United Kingdom at this time, denied any involvement in the coup plot. In his letter to the new head of state, Lieutenant General Olusegun Obasanjo, dated 31st March 1976, Gowon wrote, "I believe that Lieutenant Colonel Dimka is only trying to implicate innocent people while the real culprits get away with it." Despite protesting his innocence throughout the trial, Bisala was convicted of treason and sentenced to death by a firing squad less than 1 week after Dimka's capture. 39 other officers were also convicted, while 56 suspects were acquitted. The SMC showed no mercy and confirmed the death sentence. Some of the condemned officers were close friends and colleagues with members of the SMC and Special Military Tribunal, but they had to harden their hearts and send their colleagues to the grave. The convicts were executed in 2 batches. 32 of the condemned men were executed on March 11, 1976. Bisala continued to protest his innocence even as he was being led to the execution ground at the famous Bar Beach in Lagos. A newspaper reported that Bisala's famous last words were, "I'm going to heaven. I need no prayers any longer." Lieutenant Colonel Bukar Suka Dimka, along with 6 other convicts, were executed on May 15, 1976. Just before the firing squad went to work, Dimka grinned as a priest administered a final prayer for him while he was tied to a stake. They were executed at the Kirikiri Maximum Security Prison, and the event was televised on national television. The executions sent a chilling message from the SMC to the rest of the army. Death would be the penalty for a failed coup plot and for disloyalty.
When President Shagari swept back to power, the warning signs were loud and clear. Nigeria's economy in a terrible mess, widespread corruption at the highest government levels. Shagari tried to combat both. Only 2 days ago, he announced tough austerity measures. But Nigeria's debts have piled up alarmingly since the oil boom of the 70s collapsed. Now, Nigeria's new military rulers have accused Shagari and his government of turning the country into a debtor and beggar nation. Many fear what the military's solution to the crisis will now be.